All right, I think we will start the meeting. Thank you, dear colleagues, for attending this meeting. We have some more coming in, but I think we will slowly kick off the meeting here, which is on the topic of animal transports and the protection of animals during transport and related operations. We have good colleagues here, and we also have a lot of people following us online, and there's a great interest for this topic, and there's good reasons for this, because the current legislation, the current regulation, number 1/2005 on animal transports, has long been criticized for failing to adequately protect animals during transports, particularly over long journeys and in extreme conditions. And therefore there is a new proposal which is to be negotiated. There's a proposal from the European Commission on a new regulation for animals transports. And we're very lucky here today to have the chance to discuss this proposal with the rapporteurs, both in the rapporteur in the AGRI committee, Mr. Daniel Buda, who is joining us. We're very, very thankful for that. We look forward to discussing with you. We also have Metz, rapporteur in the TRAN committee, and we're also very happy, Tilly, that you are here. We look forward to discussing with you. And then we will have Isabella Lövin, rapporteur on the PECH opinion to the transport file, who will also join us. Isabella, good to see you. So we have a chance to have a good discussion with the very key people on this file. And furthermore, we have experts who will also join us, giving their assessment of the situation. I can tell you, I'm sure that there is a lot of interest for this topic, and I know that a lot of people are following us online as well, because the transport regulation, as you know, is a very controversial file. It is since 2000. The current legislation is from 2005, and a lot of things have happened since then. For example, the amount of transports have increased quite a lot. I myself, in 2023, followed pig transports from Denmark to Italy. We have a lot in my own country, Denmark. We have 5.5 million people, but we produce 25 to 30 million pigs every year, and more than half of these pigs are being transported outside of Denmark, and that number has really increased the last years. I followed this transport from Denmark to Italy. I drove behind the lorry in my car. It took 22.5 hours. It was 660 pigs in 5 layers from the city of Odder in Denmark to the city of Verona in Italy. And it was in September, and it was, I think everything happened according to the rules. There were no breaches of rules, but I have to be honest, I thought that what I saw on that transport was not okay when we consider animal welfare. It was 5 pigs per square meter, which is according to the rules today. 5 layers in this truck, so you had 660 pigs. No food to the pigs on the trip. There was water, but the water tanks were at no time filled. And the veterinarians that we consulted said that it's impossible if you have 660 pigs for 22 hours. You have to have a pretty big water tank to make sure that there's still water. That's basically not going to happen. So we could be quite sure that at the end of the travel there was no water for the pigs, and they were not seen to by the drivers either. By the way, it would also have been pretty difficult for the drivers to check up on the pigs, because you had 2 drivers not necessarily educated in pigs, with the conditions of pigs, and you had 660 pigs, so in 5 layers. So they had, I don't know how they would have checked up on the PECH, and they didn't. So I think it was quite an eye-opener to me. Now we have a chance to have a new legislation, and so that's what we will be discussing here today. The new proposal offers a unique opportunity to address the shortcomings of the current legislation, such as things that will be discussed, I'm sure, will be journey time limits, new space allowances, better conditions for vulnerable animals, and more robust monitoring mechanisms, among other things. So that's what we'll be discussing here today, and I will not talk more, because I think we should listen to you guys shortly. I have a few comments before we start the presentations. First, some practical aspects. This meeting will be live streamed on Interactio. The meeting will be recorded, and the video recording and the presentations that might be given, they will be available on the Intergroup website. And we have interpretation in English, French, German, Italian, Polish, and Romanian as well. There's one announcement I would like to give you, which is we have an event called From Resilience to Recovery, the Role of Animals in Humanitarian Crisis. Humane Society International and Humane Society Europe, and MEP Petrus Ostrovicius invite you to a special evening on Tuesday, the 18th of February, from 6:30 to 9 o'clock in the evening at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, dedicated to bond between animals and humans in crisis. Through compelling stories, expert insights, and striking visuals, it will be examined how animals contribute to human resilience in crisis and the unique challenges of safeguarding their welfare during such times. So that's an invitation to the event, From Resilience to Recovery, the Role of Animals in Humanitarian Crisis. And Petrus, you will be hosting the event with Humane Society International. And if you're interested, I'm sure that you can reach out to Petrus. Then we have some new appointments. The board had a meeting, the board of the Intergroup had a meeting last week, and the board agreed that we should propose to have a new honorary president for the Intergroup and 2 new vice presidents for the Intergroup. And so we would propose that Sirpa Pietikäinen from EPP Finland becomes honorary president. Since last December, our long-term colleague Sirpa Pietikäinen has returned as an MEP, taking up the vacant post of former MEP Henna Virkkunen, who is now Executive Vice President of the European Commission. Sirpa Pietikäinen is the longest-serving MEP in the Intergroup and has also chaired the Intergroup for 2.5 years during its 8th term. As Sirpa was the honorary president of the Intergroup during the last term, the board and I suggest reconfirming Sirpa Pietikäinen for this role. We have, I don't know if we have Sirpa online. I don't know if you can tell me if she is online. If she is, we could have a few words for her, but we don't have connection to Sirpa. For health reasons, she cannot be in Strasbourg this week. But under all circumstances, we would like to propose Sirpa as honorary president of the Intergroup. And if there are no objections, well, Sirpa, I see that you are online. So perhaps if you have, if you would like to, a few words, we would like to listen to what you would say.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to greet you, and very sorry I can't be here, but my shoulder was operated, so it takes a bit of a time before I can physically join you, but probably on the next meeting already. I'm very humbled, and thank you for your nomination, and very proud and happy to continue the work with you The Animal Welfare Interest Group was the first interest group I joined when I joined initially 2008 the European Parliament, and it is one of the most active and definitely the most effective ones. So looking forward working with all of you in the future too, with high ambition.
Thank you, Sirpa. And if there are no objections, I would propose that we confirm Sirpa Pietikäinen as honorary president of the intergroup by acclamation. Would you agree? Thank you. Congratulations, Sirpa. Then the next proposal from the board is the appointment of Veronika Vrecionova. Veronika, you were here last meeting in your capacity as rapporteur of the dogs and cats legislation. And you're from the ECR, from the Czech Republic. You all know that Veronika is chairwoman of the AGRI committee. And as AGRI rapporteur of the legislative report of the welfare of dogs and cats and their traceability, but Veronika has also been a member of the Intergroup for Animal Welfare since the beginning of last term, actually. So without any further ado, I would pass the floor to you, Veronika, if you could tell us about your motivation for becoming vice president.
Yes, it's working now. So thank you, Chair. So dear colleagues, it's an honor for me to apply for the post of Vice Chair of the Animal Welfare Intergroup. I talked about it here last time that I have been involved in the issue of animal welfare for a very long time, concretely all my life. But I think that we must do everything to improve the conditions of animals, but on the other hand, too much ambition will immediately stop some changes. So that is the reason I would like to try to also let's say because I'm chair of AGRI committee, to discuss, because if we are doing here something, I think it's necessary also to discuss with the people who are involved. So in this case, farmers, for example, because in any case, we will be not able to find some support from our colleagues. So that is the reason. But I'm really ready to do as much as possible for animals. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Veronika. I think your words on dialogue and interaction with the farming community is very important. And we're very happy to have you here. So if you would have no objections, I would also propose that we confirm Veronika Vrecionova as new Vice President of the Animal Welfare Intergroup by acclamation, if you agree. Welcome. And then the last appointment proposal is the appointment of Annalisa Corrado as Vice President of the Intergroup. The Annalisa Corrado, who is a group colleague of mine. She's from S&D from Italy. And Annalisa is member of the Environment Committee and also substitute in the Agriculture and Petitions Committee, committees that are relevant for our work. She's a newly elected MEP, joining the Animal Welfare Intergroup right after the European elections, and she has already been very helpful in making sure that we got support also for establishing the Intergroup in this term. The Italian delegation of the S&D is the largest in the S&D, and so she will also be a great ally to get a lot of support from the Italian colleagues. Annalisa is on the way to this meeting. She is stuck in another meeting where she has to speak, but I would give her the chance to say a few words later during this meeting. But if you agree, we would propose that we appoint Annalisa Corrado as Vice President by acclamation. That's a proposal from the board. Would you agree to this proposal? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Then we will come to the topic of today. Before we go to the rapporteurs, Mr. Daniel Buda, Mrs. Tilly Metz, and Mrs. Isabella Lövin, we will have a short intervention from the Polish presidency. The Polish presidency that are now leading negotiations in the Council when it comes to the animal transport file. And we will have an intervention by Alexander Rabitsch, veterinary councillor at the permanent representation of Poland to the European Union. Poland took the presidency of the Council the 1st of January 2025, and thereby continuing the work initiated by Hungary in July 2024 on the animal transport dossier. It's my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Porada to our meeting today, who will be joining us online. Mrs. Porada will give the Polish view on the file within the frame of her mandate to speak. So, Mrs. Porada, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. Just a short information that my current last name is Falat. So because most of the people here in Brussels know me with my current last name. And what I can say is that it's a great honor to speak to you today. And today I am representing the whole Council as a Polish presidency, and I can assure you that not only for Poland but for the whole Council, animal welfare is of paramount importance. And taking care of this very, very important topic, which is transport of animals in a good conditions, is one of the priorities for Polish presidency in the AGRI field. I am honored to be a chair of the Council Working Party, and we devote our time and energy for this semester to proceed and to continue the work that has been started by the Hungarian presidency, and I can assure you that we will try to be as ambitious as possible. And as an example of our ambition is that we took on the table, took on the board, a very tiny topic, very tiny chapter, but I can tell you that it contains the most ambitious topics of this draft. It is chapter 6 of the Commission proposal, and it contains very, very important milestones for the animal welfare during transport, which are the journey times, which is the journey to slaughter, time spent on the sea, the concept of the temperatures and also the forecasts of the temperatures, as well as feeding of animals, also unweaned animals. I can assure you that we will do our best to progress as much as possible during our presidency, but also we would like to give as much time as possible to member states, because the topic is very, very complex, and we need a dialogue, as Madame Rzecionowa perfectly mentioned. We need a dialogue not only within our administrations in the countries, but also with all the parties involved in this very, very complex process. We do not, at this stage, we do not expect that we will reach the general approach in the end of our term, but I can again assure you that we will do our best to proceed and to progress as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this valuable information. And sorry about the name confusion from my side. We look forward to negotiate with you when we have decided on our position here in the Parliament and you have a general approach. And we are happy to hear that you take on some of the key points in the legislation. So thank you for your intervention here. Now we will turn to the Parliament, and we have some time, but we don't have infinite time, obviously. So I will be pretty strict with the time given to the speakers. So we have a chance. We have different members here today from the European Parliament who I'm sure would like to comment and ask questions, and there should be time for that. So the committees on agriculture and transport have shared responsibility on the animal transport proposal, while the Fisheries Committee is asked for an opinion. And today it is my pleasure to host an exchange of views with the two co-rapporteurs of the Agriculture and the Transport Committee, Mr. Daniel Buda, EPP, and Tilly Metz from the Greens, Daniel Buda from the Agri Committee, and Tilly Metz from the Transport Committee, as well as the PECH rapporteur Isabella Lövin from the Greens. And I would propose that Daniel Buda, you will take the floor to start with. And both Mr. Buda and Mrs. Tilly Metz, you will have 7 minutes each. And then Isabella, as the PECH Committee gives an opinion, you will have 4 minutes. And so, sorry for being a little bit strict here, but then we will proceed as this. Daniel Buda is Vice Chair of the Agri Committee and member of this intergroup. He has been co-rapporteur of the report and recommendation of the Committee of Inquiry on the protection of animals during transport, the so-called ANIT Committee, where Mr. Buda led negotiations. So, Mr. Buda, let's hear from you. We'd like to understand your views on the proposal, and please, the floor is yours.
Domnule președinte, în primul rând mulțumesc foarte mult pentru...
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in the debate today. I've been looking forward to this debate very much because I'm very keen to hear from all the stakeholders and those who are interested in what's a very sensitive file. It's sensitive to public opinion, but it's sensitive also for the farmers who have many concerns about it. And therefore we have an important task to fulfill here. We need to find responses which are acceptable to the farmers, but also to public opinion, because there are many people who are very concerned about transport conditions for animals. First of all, farmers. The farmers are those who have the greatest stake in ensuring that there are good conditions prevailing for animal transport. High quality conditions are really important in ensuring animal welfare. They're one of the principal criteria which affect the economic value of the animals when they're transported to the abattoir or transported for reproductive purposes. So if you think of animals that are being transported for reproductive purposes, this is something that Tilly Metz is expert on. I just would say from a Romanian perspective that we import limousine cows, and 2,500 euros for one cow can easily be the price that the farmer's having to charge. So they're paying such a high price. They have every interest in ensuring that the animal is transported in under good conditions so that it arrives in a good state to its farm, to the farmer's farm, so that he has a good return on his or her investment. So this regulation, as the chairman rightly said, dates back to 2005, some while ago. There's in the interim been this committee of inquiry looking at all the issues here. And this file, we've been working with a lot of other colleagues. Some of them are actually here today. And we've had many opportunities to hear from all kinds of stakeholders and people involved in the sector. We've been on a number of missions to Bulgaria. We've been to airports in the Netherlands. and we've been to a number of other destinations too, to get a full picture of the situation on the ground. These hearings have been very useful in evaluating the regulation, and one of the conclusions that we have reached is that the current legislation is not being enforced as it should be by the member states. Therefore, that is the first observation. The legislation is not being implemented and enforced. So first of all, we need to flag this up with the Commission to ensure that all the interested parties are informed about this, and so the requisite action can be taken to ensure that the legislation is implemented in the member states. You also mentioned animal transport from Denmark to Italy. Chairman, you talked about 5-tier lorries. In Romania, we have very strict legislation on animal transport already. And at the moment, you would only be able to have 2 different levels, 2 separate levels in a transport vehicle. Of course, other countries have different provisions, but that, it has to be said, also can give rise to unfair competition in the sector. Therefore, we need to have properly enforced EU legislation implemented throughout the entire EU. I'm the rapporteur for our committee, and I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of colleagues who have been saying that the Commission proposals are not appropriate and that we ought simply to reject what is on the table now and start from scratch. Well, I think, look, we have this file on the table and we should try to update it, and we should try to work on the basis of what we have, because we can probably work more quickly and we can probably improve conditions more effectively and in a more timely fashion. So, Chairman, you said yourself there are quite a lot of very sensitive issues that need to be discussed and resolved here. The time for the transport, the space, the temperature, the environment. Of course, there's also the issue of sea transport and the need to have a veterinary expert involved. Now, first of all, the question of the time frame. We need to be focused on a number of different issues here. There are some countries which are very small. For example, Denmark is not geographically a big country any more than the Netherlands is. So we're not talking about long distances. They do have very highly developed, evolved infrastructure. Then there are other countries that are much bigger. For example, Romania is bigger, and we don't have anything like the good road infrastructure which you have in the Netherlands or in Germany. And this can exacerbate transport considerably. There are also issues, for example, such as the terrain, mountainous terrain. That can be much more problematic. So you need to be aware, if you're imposing rules through the medium of legislation, that you need to ensure at all times that you're not going to be signing the death knell for a farming activity in some of these more remote areas because of access issues. We don't want farms to be closing because they simply can't continue operating. Then there's the question of vets who might sometimes be called upon to sign a derogation so that the transport could continue. Now, this is not acceptable. We need to make sure that there is no unfair competition in place. Sometimes there are abattoirs that are quite close to farms, and that, of course, is an inherent advantage to a farmer because they know that farmers can't transport the animals for more than 9 hours. So, of course, that can have an impact on the price. In Germany, we know Germany is a highly developed country, but even there are, from time to time, problems in accessing an abattoir close enough to the farm. I've had many discussions with German farmers who've complained about the closure of abattoirs in their region because of the economic situation. This is another factor which is important when we're defining maximum period for transport. We need to take that into account. And now, this is particularly relevant to transport for reproductive purposes because, as I said at the beginning, it's in the farmer's interest for the animal to arrive in good shape. It's of the essence, indeed, that the animal does. We've talked, that is to say, Tilly and I have discussed animal transport, but we've also discussed the question of the conditions for the drivers, we can end up introducing provisions which mean that the driver's days and work is very fragmented. So we have to think about the impact on the drivers too. Maritime transport is a separate issue, of course. We don't yet have a maximum period of time for that. It would also be quite difficult to impose a time limit on maritime transport, it has to be said. But of course, what we can do is ensure that the ships have all the appropriate infrastructure to provide effectively and appropriately for animals that are being transported by sea. I've met a lot of experts in the sector in Romania, and a number of them have said to me that they have every interest and every stake in ensuring that the animals are transported in good conditions. But there has to be some provision for ensuring that when they're being transported, they should not lose weight. They should still be gaining it. Then the question, and that's something they've been keen to convey to me as an MEP. Separate issue is the question of carcasses. We've talked about this in the AGRI committee in particular. And we've talked about transportation of carcasses and that actually being preferable for short supply chains because it is better than transporting live animals. But of course, in turn, we don't necessarily have the appropriate infrastructure for this to be possible. So once again, we need to work on developing the network of abattoirs to ensure that there are abattoirs closer to the farms in question. And when you're talking about transport of live animals, for example, to Arab countries, this is a geographic area which is different from ours, but it is of course also culturally different, and they need animals to be transported live. I've had discussions on this in recent times with Romanian exporters who are exporting to Arab countries, and they've said, listen, we are trying to introduce a system whereby we can transport carcasses, but we can't do this because it's a cultural issue, and at the moment we haven't been able to make progress on this, and therefore we have no alternative but to be exporting live animals to Arab countries. There's then the question of embryos, transport of embryos, and this is something else which specialists have looked at, and we've engaged with these specialists to get their view on this. Once again, this is something that can't just take place under any conditions because there are impacts on the mother animal too, and that's something that we need to factor in. So once again, we need to look and see what possible solutions there could be. Temperature has a big bearing on working conditions. We know, for example, what it's like travelling by plane to Brussels, to Strasbourg, elsewhere. Sometimes we might travel by car, often we're in a plane, and you can think about the temperature. You know, for one time period, you might be okay with 5 degrees. For a short one, 30 degrees would still be a bit of a challenge. So we really do need to stand back and take a bit of a sensible look at this. In some countries, we would be imposing conditions that are impossible in the summer. In others, it would be impossible in the winter if we were imposing certain fixed conditions. So we need a bit of flexibility. Finland, for example, would have particular issues with temperature requirements. So I'm very sorry about perhaps overrunning my speaking time, but just to say, Spain, Italy, Portugal, there again, it's difficult for them to comply with 30 degrees maximum temperature unless they organise transportation at night, and even then. A couple of things that I just want to add on the basis of the Commission proposals. We talk constantly about the space available to animals during transportation, but the space that they have has a clear impact on their survival rate, because if they don't have much space between the two animals and there is some kind of accident, then a collision of that sort will certainly lead to a much higher risk of injury if the animals are closer, and much less risk if they're further apart. just in conclusion, we need to take into account reality on the ground. We can't be demanding the presence of a vet on every occasion, because this is too much to demand of the farmers. We can't expect that, and we don't have enough vets in our member states in any event. Equally, there could be a situation where, for example, a lorry may be going around a number of different farms to load up two or three or four animals in the different stops. So I think we need to be realistic in our approach, and we need to ensure that the farmers are well informed so that they can actually do the best they possibly can themselves. Sorry, I have so much more that I could add, but I think I shall leave it at that because I really want to hear from you. You'll have understood already that there are lots of issues of concern to me, but I'm sure together we can definitely address these and find much better solutions so that animal breeding remains competitive in the EU, but we also respect good conditions for animals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buda. Thank you for sharing your points of view. Lots of information we need to digest. I'll now hand the floor to you, Tilly, and you may present your point of view. And 7 minutes, if you can.
Yes, thank you very much also for the invitation, and thank you very much also to my fellow co-rapporteur, Mr. Buda, for sharing your views on the animal transport proposal. As many of you might know, I have also been chairing the Animal Transport Inquiry Committee in the last mandate, where also Mr. Buda Daniel had an important role, and also as shadow rapporteur, and where we adopted the report and the recommendation in January 2022. The work we have done during 1.5 years that ANIT was doing investigation. So we were really investigating animal welfare issues. That was the main objective during transport. And this findings that we have is of course now crucial also for the work on the regulation. So my aim would really be for my work, and also I hope for the work on our report, to take this ANIT report and recommendation as one important reference for our joint report. And of course it's also very important to listen to the experiences on the ground, but also to take into account EFSA's finding and other important studies, because one thing is clear: the scientific evidence for a need of change to better protect animals during transport is really there. So, given my experiences from the last mandate, it is of utmost importance for me to have the rapporteurship in the TRAN committee on this file, and to make also the real change which is needed for the animals, but also for the different stakeholders that we need to have on board. And that's also the experience we all made during the inquiry committee, that also transport companies are asking for more clarity and for better level playing field, and also the farmers, because as Daniel said, yes, indeed, the farmers, they don't want their animals to see them suffering, and they want to also to sell them afterwards. They need to be in a good shape. So I know, of course, that this is not an easy task, and that it has to go with compromises. I'm totally aware of that, especially with this quite special constellation that we have now of co-rapporteurship, where there is really a complete shared competence, and the overall composition of the new parliament is also challenging, which is a difference, yes, indeed, of the times when we voted the ANIT report. And even more important, as a member of this intergroup, we need also to join forces and make the most out of this opportunity. But this is not enough. We have also NGOs, and in general, the civil society is very essential also here. So thanks to everyone here in the room and online, of course, also for all your hard work and your commitment on that. But let me go back to the report. Given the early stage of process, so I cannot go really now into the detail because we are not there yet. But nevertheless, I want to present some of my priorities or some of the priorities of the Green Group. So, of course, it's about transport. times where I think it's important, and Daniel said it also, that it has to be coherent also with the resting time of the drivers. And that's why I understood the proposal and also what the scientific world said of 8 hours was extended in the proposal to 9 hours. So I think it's important to not go below that limit. And then on the sea transport, yes, it needs to be more adapted, knowing that now a lot of vessels that are used, old, very old vessels that used to transport cars or whatever, need to be more adapted. But I think nevertheless it's very important to have a limit also for the sea transport. And then regarding the temperatures, yes, I got of course we discussed also with different people, and we had it during the hearings also of the ANIT where we put the limit. But I think it's very important, yes, we need to consider the forecast. Of course, we need to analyze and to try to shift more to night transport. Yes, that is a reality. Of course, in accordance also on what the unions of the drivers, for example, said. Of course, we need to sit together also with them. Yes, it's also about safety, but again there are scientific studies that show if there is more or less even accident during the night or not. That was one solution, the transport during the night. But I think the temperature is also one point. It's important to measure the temperature inside the truck. That would be some other things we need to discuss together. Regarding the space allowances, well, it is to find the good middle ground. I mean, yes, too much space. If you have now 2 animals in the trucks that are really falling from one side to another, probably there is an issue. But it's how you can really guarantee that the animals can rebalance themselves. And during the AGRI committee, I also said, look at yourself when you're standing in a tram. It's important that you have space to rebalance yourself. It's important to be able to stand up, to sit down. So the space, not only on the ground, but in general, also the height, etc. It's important to give and to guarantee the animal welfare regarding the space. And also there, I think we cannot go from very single observation. We need to look at the studies that were done by the scientific on not just 1 or 2 animals, but in general what the science says is the best space. And that's I think what we should use as basis here for the report. Regarding unweaned calves and vulnerable animals, I think there we need really to go deeper into the conditions, what it really means for those animals. And also we intend to go again to the ground, even if we saw a lot of footage that we got also from the NGO, but really also to listen there to science. Most of the experts that we saw during the ANIT committee, they were completely against any transport of unweaned animals. They say it's not possible to guarantee animal welfare, the immune system is too weak, etc. But here we have now the proposal of 5 weeks, so I think it would be important at least not to go below this 5 weeks, and also on the vulnerable animals, end of career, or also other vulnerable animals, I think we need to go more in the discussion of the condition. And then the last point I want to come and speak about is the ban of live export and replace with transport of meat and carcasses. And yes, I completely agree there with Daniel. We need to have more slaughterhouses. This would generate, again, jobs. This would create added value also on the product. We also give, again, more valorization of the rural development. So I think there we can have a common ground for our work, because it could be also thinking, I was getting also information about specifically the situation in Romania, and I think it could be very beneficial, creating new jobs, economic opportunity. So I had also a discussion yesterday with an international NGO, which is also operating in Romania, and he told me clearly some of the observation he made, that a Romanian farmer sold a normal size Surcana cheap for about 100 euros in Romania. Then he went to Kuwait at the market and he saw a similar Turkana sheep. I don't know if I pronounce it well, sorry for that, that it was sold then in Kuwait about 1,000 euros. So a Kuwaitan farmer told him that he bought it for 900, hoping to make like 50 or 100 profit. But so where did the 100 euro go? To the trading company, which was not Romanian. And so this money did not go to the farmers, but did go to the traders, what was not Romanian. So that is the reality we have to look at. That's again an argument to say, but that's it would have been much more beneficial for everybody to have this animal slaughtered in Romania and then transported as meat and carcasses. And let me also say, I'm finishing. Let me also say regarding the halal or kosher slaughtering, I had once a debate also with the responsible of the slaughterhouses of Brussels. Already now 75% of the slaughtering that is done in Brussels is halal. So I think there also by certification, etc., and we can also go into the direction there of doing, but that is how complex the topic is, into more reversible standing that is still acceptable also by the Muslim world. But that's another discussion. But the reality is already there. So the argument they will not accept it for cultural reason, I think it's not really standing. But let me quickly remind you also on the timeline that we have foreseen. So middle of March, there will be the presentation of the draft report. Middle of April, there is a deadline for the amendments. And then normally, if everything goes well, and then the committee vote would be in October, and the plenary vote normally November or December. So still this year, that is the timeline. I agreed also with Daniel, just that you know where we are heading and where we're standing. Sorry, I was also too long. Yes, I shut down.
Both of you, thank you very much, Tilly. Both of you were too long, but very good, both of you, as well. And of course, Tilly, I forgot to mention that you were chairing the ANIT committee, and Mr. Buda, you were the co-rapporteur of the ANIT report. So both of you have extensive experience with the topic. That's good for the work to come, and you can hear that when you speak also. Now I will hand the floor to Isabella Lövin, who is the rapporteur of the PECH committee's opinion on the animal transport file. And Isabella, you have 4 minutes, and we look forward to hearing your point of view.
Thank you, Niels, and yes, good morning to you all colleagues. It's great to be back in the Animal Welfare Intergroup. I was here back in 2009 and 2014, and now I'm back in the Parliament again. So when it comes to the opinion of aquatic animals, let's just start with an estimate that every year, according to some estimates, at least 1 billion aquatic animals are transported within or to the EU. And as research has shown the last decades, fish and other aquatic animals are sentient beings. They can feel pain, they can feel stress. They can in fact also, and very often do, die during the transport process, which was also shown by the ANIT report. And there's a number of factors and situations that can cause pain, stress, or diseases, or lead to high mortality. It's about water quality, temperature, oxygen levels, CO2 levels, and other factors. The loading and offloading of the animals to and from the transport is critical, and the length, of course, and conditions of the transport. There's an interesting survey from European citizens when you ask them if they believe that aquatic animals should have the same rules as terrestrial animals during transport, and 9 out of 10 Europeans believe that that should be the case. So everyone now recognizes that fish actually can feel pain and suffer during transport. So are there any rules at the EU levels today for aquatic animals during transport? No. There's only different national legislations, but there's divergence in standards. There's no comprehensive guidelines at an EU level. So therefore, I welcome very much the proposal from the Commission now to finally include aquatic animals. Thank you for the ANIT committee with your work that kind of laid the foundation for this. And also, of course, we now have a lot of more resources to establish specific guidelines for specific species that can be transported. And that is also something which will be extremely important to have an annex and also have delegated acts according to the different species, because, of course, we're talking about hundreds of different species that are affected here now. So I'd like to start with where Tilly and also Deputy Buda finished off, that first of all, the ambition to reduce transport of live aquatic animals needs to be at the forefront. It's not sensible from a welfare point of view to transport live animals if you can avoid it. So they should be slaughtered on site and transported, just like wild fish caught are today. Then I am concerned about the proposal where there's a few big derogations proposed, derogations for CITES listed species, for ornamental fish, and also for fish being transported directly to vendors or restaurants. There's no scientific foundation for those derogations. On the contrary, CITES listed species should be treated with the highest possible level of care, of course, because they're threatened of extinction, and that is something that we need to really be aware of. So that derogation, I don't think, is justified at all. And not the other derogations either. When it comes to ornamental fish, there's a number of question marks around what should be considered ornamental fish, like carp and other species, which are also very much transported around the EU. So I'm going to stick with my 4 minutes, I think. I think the most important point is that we should treat these animals the same way that we treat terrestrial animals. It's more complicated in many ways when you're talking about the best conditions for a transport, because there are so many species with shellfish, with cephalopods and ornamental fish. So we also need to make sure that the annex of the different species is followed up by the Commission, and the resource base that we have at a European level to really take the scientific findings and propose the exact conditions should be it has to be specified, so within a certain time limit, which I am going to propose to introduce those conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabella. Sounds promising, with a lot of ideas from you as well. Before we open the floor for comments and questions to our speakers, we have 2 short presentations from experts. It will be 5 minutes each, so 10 minutes altogether. The first of these experts will provide us with a perspective of long-term experience in the field. He will be able to give us valuable suggestions for improvements to the legislative proposal. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alexander Rabitsch, who will join us online. He will delve into the areas of the Commission's proposal which raise concern and which should be changed during the input in the, well, when the Parliament has a chance to come with its input. So Dr. Alexander Rabitsch, maybe you can just say a few words about yourself, and then you have 5 minutes to give us your point of view. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Can we show the presentation? Go to the next, please. Next slide. Could you go to the next slide, please? And the next slide. I've heard that I have 5 minutes, but originally it was 15 minutes, and this presentation is done for 15 minutes. I want to show positive impacts of the EU proposal, and the example of on 4 examples. The first is non-weaned calves. I did the controls for 14 years on the, as an official veterinarian in the province, together of Austria, together with police. And after these 14 years of doing sophisticated controls or inspection of live animal transports, I joined the NGOs, and I do lecturing of veterinary officers and police, above all in Germany, but it was in former times in Poland. We saw a lot of these calves and this type of drinkers where they got above all water and in rare cases electrolytes. The metal nipples are hardly to be understood by the animals. Could you next slide, please? And in recent times they changed so that there was a surface on the rubber surface on the metal underlying structure, so that they got a little bit better situation, but the water was splashed in the mounds, and as we transport suckling calves, they could not suckle from that devices. Next slide, please. These animals, these non-weaned calves, going a long distance from the Baltic states down to Spain, to Catalonia, or from Ireland, and this is a typical phase of such a calf. Next slide, please. But the question is, does a well-nourished calf look like this calf you see on the right side? And in each consignment with 180 or 200 calves aboard, you will find 1 or 2 or even 10 or 20 or 30 of calves looking like that. Next slide, please. You see the comparison on the left side. Yeah, the problem is that we have many individuals going from different origins, going over long distances, so there is not only the problem of dehydration but infections. This symptom complex is called crowding disease, and we have a long incubation period, meaning that there is a late onset of the disease after 30 days, for example. And we have found in this study, we have found inflammations of the bronchi and the lungs, of the hearts and the heart valves. We have detected 3 different bacteria and 5 different viruses which harmed the animals. The next slide, please. Aside the dehydration and the infection, there's the problem of how to feed the animals. In normal situations, they would, at the mother, they would drink 5 to 6 times in average per day, but in the stable they get a morning meal and an evening meal. But the hunger sets on very early. After a few hours, the hunger starts, symbolized by this red line, so that it will be very high after just before they get the meal. But next slide, in transport, we have a transport duration of 19 hours where they cannot, for the moment, they will not get milk substitutes or milk replacers on board the lorries, and this will change by this new proposal, if this new proposal comes into force. But this is not the only problem. Next slide, please. Yeah, the animals are not collected from the farm, but via assembly center, where they in regular cases will not get milk substitutes, but only electrolytes, and they are brought from the farm nowadays, and this to this assembly center, and this might last for 8 hours and even more, and altogether they have a deprivation of food, of milk substitutes for 33 hours and even more. And the result is clear. The result is suffering of the animals. Next slide. Yeah, the advantages of the proposals are that they cannot that they can't be collected at the assembly center, but the way to the assembly center is not allowed to be more than 100 kilometers. The animals, the calves, must have an age of 5 weeks and a body weight of more than 50 kilograms, so they are quite more robust than in comparison to the 14-day-old calves which are transported nowadays. And another advantage, very positive, is that the height is higher and they will get water at ad libitum. Feeding on board should be possible, and there should be a central approval by the Commission, and the animal should be granted within this 1 hour pause milk substitutes or milk replacers. Next slide, please. And this is one example out of 3 prototypes which are in Europe on the way, where it's possible to feed them on board. But if you have a close look to that animals, you see the strongest will get a nipple and will drink milk, whilst the others are fighting in the back of this picture, and there are 3 nipples on the other side. It will be necessary to guarantee a controlled intake of milk substitutes and not only guarantee the access to milk, because otherwise the system will be that the first who comes will be served and the others will get no food. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Rabitsch. We are coming to the end. I'm very sorry for the time limit. Would you have a final message for us?
The final message is that there is a lot of improvements, and for the sake of the animals, which will by no way or hardly touch the income and the benefits of the haulers. There will be no reduction in income, and different articles are good in favor for the animals, which clearly will reduce the suffering of on board of transports.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rabitsch, for this valuable insight. And now the last presentation, which is also 5 minutes, is from Dr. Lynn Simpson, which I'm happy to introduce here, an Australian expert on live export and a former shipboard veterinarian. Dr. Lynn Simpson will be joining us now to address welfare gaps and much needed improvements in the maritime transports of animals. Dr. Simpson, please, the floor is yours, 5 minutes.
Hi, I've actually got a prepared presentation that has audio on it, so if somebody wants to press play and start that show, you can just stop it when you're fed up with listening to it. Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Simpson. I'd like to share with you my experience as a veterinarian doing 57 long-distance voyages at sea with livestock. These images show the pens empty at the beginning of a voyage with some sawdust on the ground for bedding, and the other images show the sewage build-up after about 8 days at sea. Here we have a typical stocking density for cattle. Obviously, it's too crowded for these animals to be resting comfortably. These animals are lying down, but obviously in a manner that exacerbates heat stress, and they would not normally be lying like this in a general rest pattern on land. This slide shows an example of how crowded pens can eventuate into injury. The bull in the middle, his intestines, he's been crushed at some point, and his intestines are actually herniated into his scrotum, and I had to euthanize him on this voyage. These animals typify the accumulative stress and fatigue that these animals have felt throughout the voyage process. The minute they get enough space and a cleanish surface to lie on, they do so and in a much more normal manner than you've seen before. This is an example of a cow that lay down in an unnatural environment and as a result was suffocated to death by her pen mates that wouldn't have realised that they were lying on top of her face. The shipping environment's completely unnatural for livestock, and as such, they experience a lot of stress from the noise, the light, the heat generated inside the ship, the high humidity, the deep sewerage that they're coated in from floor to head. And exacerbated on top of that is the fact that the flooring that they're standing on is often quite abrasive. It has to be low slip, but as a result of being low slip, it can be injurious. As a result of these decking surfaces, we see about 10% of cattle mortalities on these ships are from leg injuries. This guy here's got obvious wear on his knees, but one of those knees is actually worn down to bone level, and you can't see these injuries on the average animal until directly after a wash. This is just after we've washed this ship down earlier that morning, so that animal's clean. These guys all have really common injuries that we see on these ships with long-distance transport. The injuries often are down to bone level. They can be treated if there's a veterinarian on board or somebody with skills. They can be managed, but unfortunately often these animals have to be euthanized because of infection. Sheep have a few different issues to deal with on these ships versus cattle. They get heat stress, they get pneumonia, but they also are prone to starvation on these ships due to their numbers, and also salmonella due to stress. But another thing that these animals have is they have double-tiered decks on a lot of these ships, which means you've got 2 layers of sheep on the same deck, and that generates a lot more heat, a lot more ammonia, which is toxic to the animals and to the crew, and also the sheer packing of them means that actually being able to monitor any issues within these animals is really difficult, and we get a much higher mortality rate in these double-tiered ships. I would recommend all double tiers were taken out. Sheep are vulnerable to heat stress, and as a result, in the Middle Eastern summers, we have seen many high mortality events where up to thousands of animals have died from being too hot. A few ways to manage this is to make sure that their wool is really short before they get on the ships during summer and warm weather, and to ensure their body condition is not too high. But the big one is to limit voyages going into especially the Middle East during the peak of the summer season. Now, in this image, there's actually 7 sheep. 5 of them are alive and 2 entire sheep are dead in that grey mush in the middle. It's quite disgusting, and the deaths are absolutely awful. Eye infections in both sheep and cattle are really common on these ships and spread rapidly. They're an excruciatingly painful injury for these animals to have, or disease for these animals to have. They do require treatment if animal welfare is to be held at a decent standard. And as such, they would require a vet and or a trained technician to be on the voyages to look after them. This animal is lying in a typical amount of deep sewerage mid-voyage. This is a very...
Thank you, Dr. Simpson. We have to stop here. If you have any further comments, short comments, you're welcome. It's just so we have time to also discuss what we've seen and heard.
Sure. I would start by saying that the voyages require an economic of scale where you need to have as many animals on as possible to make money out of them. But unfortunately, what this does is causes massive animal welfare problems. But in light of some comments by Mr. Buda earlier about farmers, I too am really concerned about farmers losing money. And I think it's really important to note that because the live export fleet's basically disappearing and the global pressure against the live export trade is growing, it means that a lot of farmers are seeing less and less access to ships because there's simply less of them. When I first started in the trade, there were several hundred ships in the world, like 350 or something, and now there's 111, and the average age of those ships is about 40 years old. Now, most ships in other shipping sectors are retired and scrapped at the age of 25, which means that the live export fleet is the oldest fleet in the entire world. It's got the worst reputation, and because of its age, it's actually the highest risk of mechanical failures and sinking and capsizing, and also abandonment. So the crew welfare is a concern there as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Simpson. Thank you for your insights. Let's give a hand to all the speakers. Dear friends, we have around 15 minutes, so I'd like to ask if you would have any of the members would have any questions or comments for any of the speakers. Then we would turn to you. Anya, you raised the hand, and we also have a comment.
Yes, thank you. I try to be brief, but I really don't know where to start. I hope that the rapporteurs will look at science and factual information. And I mention this because, for instance, the 8 hours, it's an improvement, of course. But we know that for some categories of animals, look at rabbits, poultry, vulnerable animals, 8 hours is too long. So please look at science, and in that regard I want to ask you to take a close look as well to the factual report of the ANIT committee. do not only base your report on the recommendations, because we all know they were, it's a political decision. They were based on compromises and sometimes even irrational and absolutely not scientific. Then, Mr. Buda, you said in Romania everything is okay. Now, I had the I've been in your country many times, and it's a beautiful country, and a lot of things go very well there, but not animal transport. The things I saw were really horrific, traumatizing. I still wake up in the middle of the night because of the things I saw in Romania happening to animals on transport. And every time I was there, every truck we inspected, there was something wrong. So maybe it helps if people go unannounced and see what is going on instead of unannounced. We were at the Bulgarian border, Turkish border together with the ANET committee. The stables were empty. Tilly and I were barely 1.5 weeks before. Everything was filled. So please go unannounced and see what is happening there. And for people who want to see unannounced footage, I'm organizing together with Sebastian Everding an event on the 19th of February, where we will show footage from several NGOs the focus will be on exports. But if you want to see what is really happening on the ground, come to see the footage of the Animal Welfare Foundation, Eyes on Animals, Animals International, and many more. So please be there.
Thank you. We turn to Marianne Wind, Shadow Rapporteur in the TRAN Committee for the S&D.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the rapporteurs for your dedication to this important topic. Animal welfare is a cornerstone of our European values, and it's our responsibility to make sure that all animals are treated with respect and care during transport. One key point I want to emphasize today is there should be no difference in the welfare standards for animals transported for slaughter and those transported for other purposes. Whether an animal is on its way to slaughter, breeding, feathering, or any other purpose, it's still capable of feeling stress, pain, and suffering. Research shows that longer transports, regardless of animals' destination, leads to increased stress, injuries, and suffering. Therefore, we should apply the same welfare standards to all animals, regardless of their purpose. This includes journey time limits, space requirements, water, food, and temperature regulation. I urge the rapporteurs to prioritize equal standards for all animals in this file. Thank you for your attention, and I really look forward to hear your perspectives on this important topic.
Thank you, Marianne. Jessica van Lövin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much also to the experts for giving their opinion and to the rapporteurs for all the good work they're doing. I trust them very much for finding the right balance to making sure we improve animal welfare and also making sure that we keep being competitive in the agricultural industry. I do have a concern, though, and this was, raised by Mr. Buda in actually the first thing he said. He said, we have actual legislation on animal being followed through by all the member states. So if we are now discussing new legislation, but it's not followed through, how are we helping animal welfare? So I think what we need to discuss here is how do we make sure that what we have on the table is actually also implemented? Because I think the fastest track to improve animal welfare inside the European Union would be to start implementing the current legislation that we have. And this is a very big concern, because we can invent whatever we want to improve animal welfare, but if it's not implemented, it's not going to benefit any animal. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Then we have Mr. Cassar. You asked for the floor.
Oui, bonjour, Benoît.
Good morning. My name is Benoît Cassar. I'm a farmer myself, a livestock farmer. I'm the shadow rapporteur for Renew. And I wanted to talk about the video we were shown. We're talking about European legislation. This is about Australian animals, and this, I don't believe, is in compliance with European requirements. It's important to point that out. It's one thing trying to say that we should change the provisions, but we can't say that on the basis of non-compliance with these regulations in a different place. And that's a very important nuance. And one more thing, if we're too strict in Europe, the businesses won't be able to operate. So we will promote transport from other countries where the regulation, the same regulation, doesn't apply. So it's really important to strike this balance between competitiveness and the survival of our livestock operators, because otherwise we'll be creating a vacuum that those who don't comply will fill. And as Mr. Buda says, our farmers are the first to bear the effect of this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kassar. Yes, please. It's your MEP. Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you for great presentations and great work being doing here. I'm Pekka Toveri, I'm MEP from Finland. And Finland is about the size of Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria and Netherlands together. So we are, in the EU, we have a lot of different countries with different conditions. So one rule doesn't, what works in one country doesn't necessarily work in another one. And we have, of course, created our own solutions to these demands. We have Finland. We have very strict animal protection laws which are supervised by police and other authorities. We have antibiotic-free farms because we have very strict hygiene levels, special equipment to transport animals in the cold weather, etc., etc., etc. So I'd say that what's very important, I totally agree that we should put effort in this case more on supervising that the current laws and directives are followed with surprise inspections and like that, so that we really know what's happening around. And when we do new regulations, let's not punish those who have already done their homework and start to work on the premises that what the worst situations are. You know, have aims, good aims where everybody should, and best practices everybody should try to achieve, and not punish those countries who already are there where we want to be in animal protection. I don't say that we are totally 100% great in Finland either. I think that we have to improve, especially in inspections and surprise inspections, so that we can be 100% sure that all our regulations are followed. But again, we have to take into account the different situations in different countries, what they have already done, and again, safeguard that farmers can continue farming and that we don't kill the whole industry with our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are other people who would like to comment, but I will prioritize the MEPs in this discussions, as we don't have so much time. And I would like now, if there are no further comments from MEPs, I would like to hand the floor to the two co-rapporteurs who will get a chance to answer a few questions. You have 3-4 minutes each if you would like to comment. And Mr. Buda, perhaps you can take the floor. Thank you.
Da, dragă Ania, nu știu când ai fost în România, dar vreau să te asigur că cel puțin...
Anya, I don't know when you've last been to Romania, but in the past 5 years, I can assure you, I've been spending a lot of time on farms every weekend, and it's unfair for you to level such accusations. That does not reflect reality in our country. The highest standards are respected in terms of transport. Some of the experts who are not European might one day aspire to meet these same standards. We asked a lot of non-European experts to come and have a look. We also had a look at what's going on in Australia and in New Zealand. Then when it comes to the diseases in transport mentioned by Ms. Rabitsch, we don't have cases, thousands of animals, where we do have cases, this is very costly, such diseases in transport, so we have to avoid this. We had an event organized by our German colleagues where we went to Brussels with a lorry and this showcased the best technology for transport of animals, the best conditions, the best feeding, watering, constant temperatures, adapted to the specific species that is being transported. This was a prime example. And then in maritime transport, things are different. We've got legislation, but it's not adhered to. It's about implementing legislation, be it existing or coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buda. Now, Metz, please.
Yes, I wanted to react on 3 points. I try to be very short. First, on the remark by Jessica von Lövin and also what Daniel Buda said now, it's a question of implementing. Yes, and what we found out during the ANIT committee, that was exactly in order to do a proper monitoring and also controlling of what's going on the ground, we need better rules, because we got the feedback during the ANIT committee that some rules were not clear enough, that there was a possibility of too much loopholes. But what it means, it has to have enough space, for example. So we need to have better, clearer rules, and that's why we need new rules, because we see the implementing of the current rule, even though are not possible, and they are not based on the last scientific knowledge. So for me, that's exactly, the implementing is lacking because also the rules are not good and not clear and not, that's why we need, that's part of what we learned out of the ANIT committee. Then the second remark, it was speaking, sorry, mon collègue de Renew, he exactly said, yeah, there is the risk of delocalization if our rules become too strict. I mean, of course, it is very important that we apply also mirror clauses regarding the importation of products. That's in general. We need to apply the same standards that we put in Europe. We need to put them also for the import. Never forget that the European market is the largest inner market of the world still. So people would adapt if they still want to come on this market. It could have a domino effect. Voilà. And then I was thinking, now my colleague is certainly saying, yeah, okay, this is footage not coming out of Europe, but I will ask our colleagues that have footage from Europe on the situation on the vessel to send it immediately to you. We have a lot of footage on the situation of vessels in Europe, and it looks exactly the same than we have there. And then to my colleague of Finland, I totally agree when you say we should not punish those who are doing already a good job. I totally agree with that. And when we talked with the companies, the transport companies, and also regarding the situation in the different countries, it's exactly also with the new rules to create a level playing field. That not those, because there are those that are really already trying to do, to respect more animal welfare, but that we put the same standards for everybody. So it's new rules, it's also guaranteeing level playing field for everybody. Fair conditions, same standards. Thank you for your remarks and inputs to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you speakers. I think it's been a very constructive dialogue we had here today, and I wish you guys luck on the negotiations. I wish all of us luck on the negotiations. is this an urgent remark?
Yes, and very important. I don't think we have another opportunity to clarify all those things, if I may. Please, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gabriel Paun. I'm the EU Director of Animals International. A quick remark on Austrian law, one quick remark on the law enforcement, and one about Romania. It's very quick.
We don't have time, actually, so I thought it was a point of order or something like that, but the meeting is closing, so I can't give you the floor.
Understand.
That's right now. Thank
Perhaps
you.
bilaterally, if they're
Yes,
interested. Sure.
bilaterally, of course. Thank you to all the speakers, and good luck to you. We will have negotiations coming up, and you will be leading them, and we will be supporting a good result. We in the Animal Welfare Intergroup, we support an ambitious result where we focus on transport as much as possible on carcasses rather than live animals, as much as possible. Annalisa Corrado, you were elected as Vice President. I think next time you will have a chance to say a few words on your motivation. We will see each other next time. The next meeting is 13 February 2025. The focus will be on aquatic animals. Thank you very much.
And greetings to Alexander Rabitsch. War froh, dich zu sehen. Liebe Grüße. Weiß nicht, ob er noch